You professional streamer, you. Come on. Hey, we're live on the poo tubes. Let me just turn myself down. Where I've strangely
and I'm live at last.
Hey!
Okay, cool. Hey!
Hello and welcome everybody to the not an F1 news focused Failcast FFM. Well, we've opened a radio station now. F1 podcast with Valkenberg and the Taco Man extraordinaire who is likely to assassinate you with a pickle. It's Mr. Definitely Zero. How you doing, mate?
Hola, hola. I'm awesome. I'm loving lockdown. I must be the only person in the world, I think, who's genuinely loving it. What I'm not loving is that my controller is being very... Oh, there we go. It's back. Yeah, I'm having the best time. I've become like a Renaissance man. I've been learning to grow plants. So I've got like window boxes full of berries.
Wow.
I've gone through a crate of lager, a crate of Red Bull. I've made 7 curries in 2 weeks. So much so that I genuinely burned my stomach and had to stop. And, I have an apology to give as well. If anyone who has been leaving lovely messages for me on my YouTube channel is watching, I apologise for the lack of content. There are several reasons for this. There was some unfortunate incident with some of my technology. And also, I was really sick at the start of this week, but I'm hoping to get things... Like this podcast is my first foot back into normality, hopefully. So, thank you for your patience. I've had some lovely messages. People have been worried like I'm dead or something. It's very sweet of you all. How are you? How are you surviving lockdown? Your lockdown's a lot more strict in Britain. Have the old bill been round to check your TV licence?
No, but so where I live in Harlow in Essex, feel free to stalk. We have come up in the news as being, it was either the 4th or 5th worst district in the whole of the UK for keeping lockdown. So police have been going round, basically going up to people and saying, "What are you doing?" I have only been out like once a week to do a weekly shop, like at 9 o'clock at night, because what I've noticed is avoid going shopping during the day where everyone queues, go last thing at night because everyone's starting to restock for tomorrow, so I was able to get some bloody loo on, which is great. Yeah, what I've had to do, because I'm a key worker, is carry around a letter from the government saying that I'm a key worker because I was stopped. Just kind of say, what the hell were you doing? And I'm like, I'm off to get shopping and I'm a key worker anyway. Ta-da! Have all of your excuses. So yeah, they have gone proper, like, angry meltdown. But it seems it's slightly awkward because where I've gone to the household names of Lidl's and Asda, which is all that I've got near me, they've like if you go down like the DIY, it's a miniature backstory. During all of this, my boiler exploded and sunk my floor, and my flat is suspended and it was dripping through the bottom and it was causing a massive issue. So I needed DIY doing. But if you start going down the DIY aisle, people start looking at you really angrily as if to go, "That's non-essential." And I'm like picking up a hammer and posing as if to go, "Non-essential goods, bitches." So yeah, I felt proper judged for like a week. Now it's calmed down and I'm all good. Hey John, how are you doing well?
To be fair, mate, I think it was probably the trolley full of fertiliser and petrol that set them worried. Hello, Canaanite. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope you are well and safe in lockdown.
Yeah.
You're about to watch me bin it at Eau Rouge and then go on board with Simon for the rest of the episode.
At least it's dry for both quali and race, so that's good.
That is good.
I don't do Spa very well in the wet on this game for some reason, and it's because you bottom out at Eau Rouge, and I always bung it in the fucking ball.
This is 2019, mate, yes.
Track is quiet right now.
This means you must be it must be your first time joining us. Welcome. This is our bi-weekly F1 news podcast, and we do a pseudo career mode. Don't worry, mate. I can't stay on track either. Back to you for a moment, Simon. I am glad you found toilet paper though, because as always, I've been incredibly worried about your arse all week, and I'm just happy to know it's fine.
It does seem to make news. Hey, Manna, thanks for joining. You can always come back and visit later. He's in at work. And actually, shout out to Manna and other NHS workers for doing sterling work as always. You have our backs.
Indeed, Canaanite as well mentions he's got a letter from the police, for the police, not from the police.
From
Sorry,
the police.
I don't want to cast aspersions on your character there, mate. We've only just met.
He's only been in the stream 5 minutes and he's already a wanted
Accused
criminal.
of being an offender. I'm really sorry, mate.
Boo. The 2 metre rule was brought out for him because of children.
And you found my YouTube this week. That's awesome. Do you know, I meet the best people through that YouTube channel. I really do. Grand Prix World, man. Grand Prix World. That's where the best people reside.
And we've had some of our long-term viewers, actually. I saw on Twitter a certain Elias had downloaded and bought or got hold of Grand Prix World himself. So you are spreading the love for Grand Prix World.
Yeah, I wonder who he had to murder to get the money for that, because I paid the best part of €100 for my copy of that game.
Boo. I think you can download it for free now on... there's like a... What's it when they call it something where? Abandonware. That's it. There's an abandonware website with it on, because it's got a crack version so that you don't have to stick in the CD, because my CD has a little freak out moment every once in a while.
You're determined to drive up my blood pressure, aren't you?
I know. Oh, Rhino's in as well. This is like a rave from the... He was right. Everyone is bored.
It's like a 2014 reunion.
Yeah. How is everyone? I hope you're all well.
So, because there's not really any F1 news, well, there is a little bit of F1 news that we will get into at some point. What I do have is, Simon and I have been doing this now for 10, 11 years, and I realise that we're really ignorant and never get back to people's comments or emails, which is probably why a lot of you fucked off. So with that in mind, I've been through everything, and I have written down a whole bunch of questions that we will be going through as the episode goes on. And I see you writing there, Canaanite, about Grand Prix World, and I am going to come back to you as soon as I'm not at risk of killing myself and all the spectators and possibly Simon.
No, that was me getting a bit confused.
I can barely talk and drive at the same time, let alone read, talk and drive, but I will read that in just a moment after I've cut that corner. Look at that. Wasn't that buttery smooth cutting? So we do have, hopefully, the full episode's worth of content this time, unlike last time where there was nothing to talk about because there was no announcement from F1 about what was going to happen.
No new game announcement.
Through all that good stuff. Now you're among the people who can't get Grand Prix World to run, and I feel your pain. It is very difficult, but there is actually a lot of fans still out there. And I run it on Windows 7 on an iMac, believe it or not, in boot camp. But there is a Windows 10 patch out there. It's just very hard to find. Was that you causing that yellow flag, you degenerate?
Yeah, I'm out of the barrier. I caught the inside curb at shit on, as I call it.
That actually happens to me all the time as well. To be honest, this track actually is just a series of straights interconnected by embarrassing moments.
It sounds like my career.
That's pretty much it.
Just life.
So we'll kick things off and do the podcast bit of the podcast because, we like to waffle at the start.
Yeah.
So the only real bit of F1 news, if you can call it news, is obviously there's been a rumour now for best part of a month about Toto Wolff leaving Mercedes.
Yes.
And going to Racing Point Badger Eyebrows for Stroll, now to be known as Aston Martin, to be their team principal.
Yeah.
And I was a little sceptical at first, but today it's been announced that actually he has bought shares in Aston Martin. Now, he used to be a shareholder in Williams, and he sold those shares when he took over at Mercedes, because I guess there was a conflict of interest.
You'd have thought
and
so.
The fact that he's bought these now, and it's suddenly not conflict of interest, even though they are essentially direct competitors, both in a sporting sense and in a car manufacturing sense. It looks to me like it's something that's happening. And it leads me to the conclusion that maybe Lewis is off from Mercedes at the end of the year. Speculation time, go!
It also makes me wonder Mercedes' long-term future in an economy that is going down the shitter for the next little while, when they've got a Formula E program going that costs way, way less and is more road relevant. And I just feel like how many stars need to align for people to just finally go, actually, do you know what, this does feel quite final. And now, actually, I guess as well, what's really interesting is that they can continue to monitor how their other programs stack up against their F1 involvement, considering that the 2021 rules are now going in 2022 instead, which means that they don't need to invest in anything for a little while and can kind of ponder and think.
Yeah, I mean, actually, this was one of the more recent questions that came in for us. And it actually came from Lawrence, weirdly. Not Lawrence Stroll himself, just some guy called Lawrence.
Are you sure?
Yes, because he was actually asking what our take is on the whole Aston Martin thing. And it got me thinking, actually, because people who've been around the block with us will remember how I felt about Tony Fernandez dropping the Caterham and Lotus names on his team, because it wasn't really Lotus, nor was it fully Caterham. I mean, he did buy Caterham, but it wasn't like an organic kind of thing.
A bit of a pre-op.
But I sort of feel differently about this now. Now I've really thought about it. It is really Aston Martin that's entering. He has bought the team, and he's bought the car manufacturer, and it actually makes business sense. Like, I don't look at it and go, well, he bought that car company solely because he bought a racing seat for his son and realised that he's been driving around for the last season and this one in what essentially looks like a nipple, with a nipple for a logo. And that's not going to be his legacy. Not on my watch. So I need to buy immediately a prestigious sports car manufacturer so my son has some credibility. I really don't think that's the case. I think it actually makes good business sense. Whether it makes good long-term business sense, given the way petrol-powered cars are going the way of the Dodo, but at least in the short term, it actually does make sense. How Toto Wolff fits into this, anyone's guess, but clearly he does. And to be fair, even though Aston Martin have been taken over by a very, very wealthy man, the economic downturn does kind of mean they need all the money they can get. So if they can get some more investment from him, then more power to him. And up until the year Force India went into liquidation, that was a team that was on the cusp of greatness all the time. And you and I were saying like 3-4 years ago, all they need is a works deal.
Yeah.
Like, everything else is in place. They're so much more efficient than other teams. They're doing more with less. They were 2-3 times in a row fourth in the Constructors' Championship. They were getting podiums occasionally. Like, they just needed that little extra push. And I'm wondering if this is it. I'm wondering if Lawrence Stroll actually is the knight in shining armour that's going to deliver for that team.
Well, he has such a history of being... he is a person that makes sure that he puts the money in to make something successful.
Lance. Sorry.
Is that money or is that just sperm? I'm not sure. It's just DNA.
Bit of both.
Human juice.
It's strange how often you find those two things in the same place anyway. Just ask Peter Stringfellow.
Oh dear. Such an ironic name, because there was I suppose it was only strings that was on the people that he surrounded himself with.
Quite often there was only string on himself as well.
Yeah.
But before I let you continue, I just want to say that Canaanite chipped in, feeling like Merck have been planning on leaving for a while, and has been hearing rumours that they could leave around 2022, 2023, which I think is a very reasonable timeline, actually. But sorry, Simon, go.
And I kind of agree with that. And so I remember what we were saying beforehand, and it was around the fact that we were hoping that Lawrence Stroll, when he came in, would let them open new stuff and do new things, but essentially continue on the same type of work ethic that they've done by managing themselves on shoestring budgets, because it's not necessarily the work ethic that's the problem, it was just the lack of finance. So if he is just pumping that in and organising the structure so that they can utilise that money effectively, then I agree. I think they're onto something pretty damn good. I'm going to go into barriers again. Fucking hell.
You're having like all my races this season in one qualifying session.
So
it's incredible.
I've accidentally gone out on the default setup, which is why it's fucking me over, because I'm used to my actual setup. I've somehow got a setup that is labelled Belgium, but it's just default. So
it's funny that you say that, because if Canaanite has eagle eyes, he will note that at the start of this episode, when I was loading my setup, I have a setup called Belgium, but it's actually for Monza. And I had to load another one from the bottom.
God.
One would assume Merck would be for sale. Who would buy the team? Well, there was a rumour that Penske were looking at buying them, which I never put much weight behind, but it is an interesting question because they are a strong going concern.
Well, I just don't know if Indy, haven't they, the actual circuit? I wonder how much of that money is then tied up with that rather than going for an actual team.
Yeah, because I mean the thing is, if you're going to buy a team, that's the one to buy, right? But I just don't know if entering F1's all that attractive, and to anybody really. Yeah.
Well, we've seen that there's only like the rumblings of the Spanish team maybe coming in, aka HRT2 The Revenge, from before.
No, please use the correct name. It's HRT2 Electric Boogaloo.
And that seems heavily unlikely. I don't think people will come in until there is proper cost cap measures in place that work and that has been proven to work, and also that the regulations show that racing works for that type of budget. I just think, and I think F1 itself is on a really interesting curve at the moment, because the latest kind of press lines that are coming out are people going potentially 4 teams could go under if this coronavirus issue continues to go on long term. Does that then push people to 3-car teams? Would that then be a deciding factor that Mercedes goes, do you know what, this really isn't financially worth it for us anymore? Toodles, everyone. Interesting times, I think, just all round.
Kenneth was pointing out that if you bought Mercedes, you'd technically be entering at the top. You are correct in many ways, but actually, if they left 2022, this would be the start of a new set of regulations, and there's not necessarily a guarantee that they would still be the team to beat. Plus, the question is whether Mercedes' high-performance powertrain would also stop manufacturing for F1, but I mean that would kill the sport stone dead, because like a third of the grid runs Mercedes power. F1's been in this really weird place for sort of 5-6 years now, where God only knows what's going to happen. I mean, I have honestly no idea how things are going to look 4 or 5 years from now. Aston Martin's entry is kind of surprising in one sense, and I think it's only the family connection that's really brought it to fruition. I don't expect Alfa Romeo to stick around, given how badly their business is going. Haas are halfway out the door as far as I'm concerned. Williams have had to sell their advanced engineering business, incidentally the only part of the Williams empire that was profitable.
Oh, have they?
Yeah, in order to refinance the team, which, if anything, shows what true racers they are. But
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's a good long-term strategy.
No, that doesn't sound businessy to me.
No.
I don't know how much the government contracts are for them to be building respirators and all of that stuff as like a very, very short-term income boost. But most teams have also started to furlough their staff as well. The people who I know that all work in F1, I only know of one of them that isn't furloughed at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it makes total sense that they would be generally, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's just interesting.
But also, I've got to wonder if the Toro Rosso Red Bull model's really all that viable, given that Alpha Tauri, pronouncing it correctly, Martin Brundle, given that they've gone from being sort of a feeder team with hot young talent to being seats to put people we don't know what to do with.
Yes.
So, like, why would you spend so much money on that?
Agree.
Yeah, correct, Canaanite. 4 teams running Merc Power and will be by 2022. I believe they're all locked in now for that long. Because I know Williams extended. And F1 just can't attract a new engine manufacturer because, hybrid is already dead before it really got started and everyone's moving over to full electric.
Reminds me of DVD HD.
Yeah. So, God only knows what's going to happen, but I do wish Aston Martin the best of luck, even though they fired Fat Bob Bell, which he was sort of the cuddly mascot of that team, and now he's gone to McLaren to run their IndyCar team. Right, while you're doing your lap, why don't I jump on with you? I'm sorry, I know it's very boring, but I'm not going to run again because I don't need to, and I'm scared of putting it in the bin. So I'll ride on board with you while I take a look at some of these questions that have come in. We have discussed Aston Martin. Let me give that a cheeky tick.
Okay.
Here's a question that I quite liked. Initially, I had to message the person back for more context.
Okay.
Because I got a message on my Twitter from one of my YouTube viewers, a younger one, obviously.
Whew.
And it just said in capital letters, "Explain UGE Day." and I, yeah, it's good, isn't it? And I went back to him. I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "What the hell went on with UGE Day? I'm seeing all these YouTubers making videos about him. Like, why has he come back?" Oh, excellent work, Simon. You recovered that with a default setup. Now I feel like a failure.
No. That was pant wetting stuff. I wasn't very pleased. Happy. Well.
Who else has made it through? Of course, Robert Kubica has made it through. Giovinazzi is out. Grosjean is out. Russell, Magnussen, and Albon are out. Meh. Yeah. So I've noticed this as well. So people like Aidan Millwood and the people who do sort of like F1 stories from the past.
Yes.
There've been a lot of episodes about UGE Day recently. With stuff like worst F1 driver ever? Question mark. And it's like, well, obviously yes. Obviously yes. There's not even a question mark to it. But what they were really asking is, what was the story behind him, and how did he get there? Was he a pay driver? Now, Simon, you being a big fan of all things Japanese and Super Aguri, you can please step in at any point if something I say here is wrong. But if I recall correctly, Super Aguri was founded solely to create a seat for Takuma Sato.
Correct.
Who was a huge name in Japan at the time, and deservedly so, because I always kind of liked Takuma Sato, but wasn't good enough to hold down a seat at the main Honda team because reasons.
He had an atrocious 2015, didn't he? He kept crashing into everything and everyone, and it just unravelled, didn't he? I think he only scored points once all year, whilst Jenson Button was busy getting podiums and trying to fight for wins.
What I love as well is Knight is feeling it too, with all caps, Sato is the best. You're going to fit in perfectly around this podcast, mate. Perfectly. So the team was founded on a fairly limited budget, initially running old Arrows chassis from the old Arrows factory with Honda units strapped into them, and then after that it would always get the year before's Honda car.
The old A23 from Arrows.
Exactly. And they needed another Japanese driver. Well, didn't need necessarily, but they wanted another Japanese driver.
Yes.
And at the time, there wasn't really anyone ready for F1. On paper, he was actually among the better qualified people, as I recall.
Yeah.
I don't know if he'd necessarily done much open wheel beforehand, but as a racing driver, he was sort of among, until he actually got in the car at least and you saw him, he was actually among the more logical choices. So it kind of makes sense that they picked him, because some people were wondering, is he a pay driver? And it's like, no, he was just a Japanese guy who happened to be walking past the factory at the right time. And honestly, like, all credit to Honda and to Aguri Suzuki and everyone at that team, even though a lot of the names involved with that team have become synonymous with bullshit and failure. If they'd have known how bad genuinely and how dangerous Yuji Ide was going to be, they would never have put him in the car. It was just that it seemed like a logical decision to make, to take him. And he got his super license, or he qualified for his super license, and it just turned out that he was an unhinged and dangerous maniac, and in the end F1 revoked his license. But you know, I'm quite happy to say he's the worst F1 driver of all time. I wouldn't necessarily say he's the worst driver of all time. He's still in motorsport. He's had some success, I think. He just couldn't drive F1 cars. And it reminds me, he's like a more spectacular Stoffel Van Dorn. Because, you know, he's doing okay in Formula E. And
he's doing well.
You know, he did fine in Super Formula, but he just couldn't get his head around F1 cars. You know, obviously he did a lot better in an F1 car than Yuji Ide did. You know, I'm not saying it's a direct one-to-one comparison, but the logic's basically the same. Being a racing driver doesn't mean you're good at every kind of car, and you see that with any F1 driver, really. I mean, look how badly Sebastian Vettel took to the regulation change in 2014. It just didn't suit his driving style. And, you know, once the rear wings of the car were redesigned, and the width of the cars changed, and so much of the geometry of the cars and the handling changed, he got his ass kicked by Daniel Ricciardo. Had Ricciardo been there a year before, would Ricciardo have beaten Vettel? We'll never know, but I'd argue the chances were probably slimmer. So, you know, it's not necessarily a total spit in the face for me to compare Van Dorn to Yuji Ide in this case. But suffice it to say, in the end, what killed off Ide's career, wasn't it? He flipped a spiker over?
Yeah, he smashed into the back of Christian Albers at Imola, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And sent him on a barrel roll.
And for some reason, you know... The problem is, I quite like Imola as a track, but in my mind, I only associate it with bad things, bad and scary events.
It was... Because it was a weird kind of thing anyway. So when he came in at Bahrain, which was the first race that year, he was like 3 seconds off of Sato's pace. And they was like, right, he's barely had any testing, he's barely had any time in a car. That Arrows... Whilst it was actually a good midfield car in 2002, no one had touched it since. So it was like bastardised for all kinds of problems. Bastardised for the 2006 regulations, obviously. And it was running down on power. So you kind of go, oh, okay, not great. But what I think was the problem was that it wasn't just the Imola thing. It was also... just how many times he spun in qualifying in Australia. Obviously eliminated in Q1, but he done 3 spins in 15 minutes. And was like pointing the wrong way. It was ruining people's laps. It was just a complete lack of experience and being completely out of his depth, and just not showing control of that kind of reflex and speed. So it was cumulative because there was no like particular improvement from weekend to weekend either.
No, he didn't seem to be getting any more comfortable with the car at any point. Now, as you point out, the car was comparatively a bit of a dog. Although, as you say, the Arrows A23 was actually quite a well-balanced machine.
Yeah. Frentzen and Benaldi done all right with it, didn't they, in 2002?
Yeah, I mean, sticking parts on it to make it compliant with new regulations is probably going to throw all the good work in the bin. But you'd think, or you'd like to think, he could at least get it round a lap cleanly, but that happened surprisingly infrequently. Ooh, you cheeky devil. I'm going to blame the fact that you've beaten me to provisional pole on Robert Kubica, who got in my way at the last corner.
Brr. Still slowing everyone down.
I know.
In the real lives.
What a bastard.
But I don't... Is Yuji Ide the worst driver ever? I don't know if he genuinely is in terms of like outright pace and drama and speed and terribleness.
But are we talking people who've had a race start? Because this is an interesting game now. Because for people who've like done practice sessions who are really, really bad,
yeah. Because then so the worst person to take part in like a Friday afternoon would have to be Chanok Nissany.
Yes.
12 seconds off the pace. Spinning it, the engine conking out because it was going so slow. The guy is a hero. And I've read the story of like how he was able to do all bits and bobs. And the fact that his son is now a Formula One development driver, despite being easily he was slower than Tatiana Calderon, says a lot. So like that is a joy. But then I think of even Jean-Denis Delatraz. I remember at Estoril, he was too exhausted basically after qualifying in the Pacific, and he was 7 seconds off Montermini, and was lapped by like lap 6 and stuff like that. But that also then proves your point as well. In other Formula, you can do really well because he was a superb sports car driver, but just not for Formula One in any way, shape, or form.
No.
Yeah, there's some interesting ones.
I like this though, the Failcast Bin of Garbage Awards. Yeah, it's got me thinking now, because I mean there are some standout bad performances now I think about it. Because I also recall, and I'm showing my age now. I mean, I was too young to watch it at the time, but I did remember seeing a videotape recording of it. And this is... Oh, what year was it? It was Satoru Nakajima in the Lotus. Quite a good Lotus. So it must have been 88?
88 or 89, that would be.
Yeah, 88. And God, I can't remember the circuit. But he failed to qualify.
Monaco.
Yeah, there we go.
And
so to not
Senna's
not
all
qualify
like
that car.
right up top or something, isn't he? Or whoever it is. Or PK, sorry, not Senna.
So there are some definite performances where drivers are a million miles apart. I mean, you saw that as well with the... was it the 40 cars?
Diniz and Moreno?
Yeah, weren't they, at least initially, really far apart? Or am I thinking of another team?
Simtek were a bit, because you had Verstappen in one and then Domenico Schiattarella in the other. And they would be quite a bit apart.
That was one mismatch I was thinking of. And then also Was it the Lola team?
Oh, for Sospiri and Rosset.
Yeah, Sospiri was way faster than Rosset.
On his only qualifying session, he was still like 1.5 seconds faster than him.
Yeah,
Poor
and then
Ricardo.
for some reason, Rosset manages to get a seat at Tyrrell for the next season, and Sospiri is never spoken of again. He's on my list of drivers who I think really didn't get a fair crack of the whip.
Exactly.
There's Sospiri. There's
You're going to go say Sarazan?
no, actually, because he's French. That eliminates him.
And a druggie.
Yeah.
Steroids.
Oh God, he drove for Jordan briefly. Shit, what's his name?
Apicella?
No.
Naspetti?
No. It was one of the later Jordans.
Oh, okay.
Tiago Monteiro.
Montero, yeah. He drove and then went to Midland alongside Albers for 06. Yeah.
I actually quite rated Montero.
Yeah. It was interesting, actually, you saying that, because in 2005, at the very beginning, you can hear James Allen and Martin Brundle getting really excited over Narain Karthikeyan. And he was the teammate, and they was like, "Oh, such fastest Indian! It's going to be absolutely amazing. He's a bit wild, but my God, look at him drive!" And then Montero takes a few races to get going, and then he generally gets the better of him by the end of the season. Fast forward 7 years later, and we're like, God, the cucumber at the back of the grid. And I don't think he was a terrible driver at all. He was just in shite cars. Up against people like Pedro de la Rosa, who doesn't age nor die.
No,
So...
Pedro de la Rosa has been middle-aged forever, like Rubens Barrichello. They're just in that club. They were born balding. David Brabham is another guy I think didn't get a fair crack of the whip.
Yeah.
I actually thought he had potential, but never really got a chance to show it.
Agreed.
Benoldi, that we mentioned. I thought
I think he was right.
He was pretty handy.
The very first Red Bull driver in F1.
He was. R.I.P. in peace. And Ken and I get bonus points for remembering that Montero did actually get a podium in 2005 at the US Grand Prix.
Yes,
that
he did.
I made a joke about to you before we went live. So everything's falling into place.
Hey James, hope you're well. In the lockdown in the chat there.
I don't think I block YouTube links, mate. But maybe Twitch still does. I don't know. But please feel free to go ahead, because any Taki Inui tribute is very welcome here. Simon and I are both huge fans of Taki Inui. And
I follow him on Twitter and haven't got a fucking clue what he says any of the time. Yeah, it brings me joy. And he's now changed his name on there to Taku Inui. And I'm like, is this some kind of worshipping passing of the sword from one Taki to a Taku?
Actually, now we're on this whole Japanese kick, I'm going to completely derail the podcast for exactly 30 seconds. Simon, you have to watch James May's series on Amazon about him travelling through Japan, and then you and I have to go to Japan.
Okay.
We have to go.
Done. I've got a 21-day itinerary of how to get around all 4 Japanese islands as a holiday. It's my I will do it bucket list.
And on the podcast bucket list, I also sent something to you a while back, and we never talked about it. So, 24 hours of lemons.
Yes.
Where people drive shit cars in a 24-hour endurance race. One day, mate, we have to do that. We'll get a GoPro, we'll learn how to internet, and we have to go and do that. That would be such an experience.
I'd like to do it in a Duplo car, please. A little two-stroke, meep, meep. And it has to have a comedy musical horn.
Oh, of course. That goes without saying.
Or I can Flintstone it.
hold on to your anuses, everybody, because it looks like Simon and I could be in a scrap here for pole position.
A little bit. I've only got one set of because I was too busy spinning throughout Q1. I've used all of my tyres, so I've only got one run I can do. So I'm going to chill for a minute.
I'm going to... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, keeping on the Japanese trail, I would like to give a shout out to two Japanese drivers who I think were slightly underrated.
Please do.
And they're from the 90s, so you can appreciate my oldness. And they are Naoki Hattori and Hideki Noda. Specifically Noda. I
was going to say, I rate Noda.
Especially now that he's got his jiu-jitsu daughter, who's going to be the next big thing for female racing. But he only got 3 starts in the Larousse at the end of 1994. And I thought he'd done very, very well, given the fact that every single session his engine blew up. So he never actually got very many laps, yet still managed to qualify, get it on the grid and trug around. But he was also responsible for making sure the Simtech team started in 1995, and he gave all of his money in advance for his drive, because Schiattarella had the first half of the year and he had the second. And he gave all of his money. Then the Kobe earthquake hit, and then the second half of his money never came through, and then that's what collapsed the team in part.
So, the good old days, eh?
Had to get an earthquake
check to check.
James Angley. I thought Suzuki was going to be one of them, given his podium. See, I do rate Aguri Suzuki, even though he holds one of the records for the worst amount of did not qualifies in like a row when he drove for Sack Speed in the 80s. But I do actually...
Speed, I miss you.
I do rate Aguri Suzuki. And come back to me after your next comment and just shout 1990s F1. Actually, shout Fond Mattel at me, and I have a juicy story that I came across today.
It's okay, because Canaanite has swung into your rescue, because he has asked why were there so many Japanese drivers in the 90s, and I've got a feeling that, Simon, no one is better qualified to tell us than you. And also, hi Beetlejuice. Good to see you, mate.
Hey Beetlejuice. Senamania and everyone in Japan absolutely loved motor racing at that time. It was a big booming industry. You had the kind of post-Honda era as well, but mainly Senamania had got everyone absolutely crazed and on board with Formula One. And it was at that point where Japanese technology was seen to be like the big leader of the field. So you had Suzuka out there. Obviously, AIDA then joined the calendar as the Pacific Grand Prix, although it didn't really take off nearly as well. But it
Yamaha
was
entered as well, didn't they?
Yeah, with Brabham and then with Tyrrell as well. Yeah. So there was an awful lot of thrust around Japan, but it was not just that. It was like the electronics industry was Japanese led, and the Western world kind of followed, and that was like the mecca. So it was important for F1 as well as everyone else to kind of entertain Japan in that era. Slightly less important these days, although everyone's much more it's just as fanatical. But yeah, there's plenty of stuff that's still kind of going on in Japan. If you ever watch Super Formula, some of their rules are a bit strange, but the racing in general is good fun. And actually, the Super Formula cars are still super frigging quick as well. So definitely would recommend you.
Japan is one of those countries where they know how to have fun, and they don't care if they look ridiculous while doing it. They're just like, fuck it, this is fun, I'm doing it.
Absolutely.
And I've got nothing but respect for that. Yes, Beetlejuice, we are indeed treating ourselves to some quarantine fun time actions.
Ooh, that's a good lap.
There was something else I wanted to chip in, and also, yes, I do indeed also love Fuji. Yeah, of course I rectified it. There's no way I was going to let Hulkenberg get pole position. It would be a world gone mad. So... Oh, you wanted me to remind you about Fond Metal. Before I go on any further, you had something to say that involved Fonmetal.
Oh, yes. So, long-time viewers may know that I have a soft spot. Minardi is always my favourite team, but Osella is my kind of like pre-Minardi team of love as well, because they were just a couple of people in the garage going, we'll do an F1 team, lol. Someone on the Osella Facebook group that I'm on, because, you know, hardcore bitches, posted they'd gone up into their loft and they had found the 1992 Osella F/Fondmetal club newsletters that they got sent out in the post. Back when you used to be able to basically pay like a tenner a year to join their fan club and get like little updates sent through. Now, I say newsletter or magazine, it is literally some pieces of paper just stapled together and thrown through. It's so back of the grid, I love it. But when Fondmetal closed at the end of the European races in 1992, they sent out a newsletter to everyone saying that they're shutting down and they won't be competing for 1993. And the back page says, this puts at speculation the fact that Gian Maria Rumi, I think was the team boss then, cool, is not going to sell on his team, which means that these buyers are not going to be buying the team any further. And lo and behold, the second person listed, Gianni Morbidelli, and his family to purchase the F1 team was the big rumour. And I was like, what? And apparently his family in Italy run an engineering firm, and they were looking at buying and had put in like some kind of bid and offer, and they'd refused it and said no to shut it down. But it just made me think, how good would it have been to have had Gianni GP on the grid for 1993?
Morbidelli Racing. Actually, now I hear it. It's something I want to go back in time and make happen more than anything else. Hitler gets away with it today because I need Morbidelli GP. Lot of love in chat for Minardi. I agree with Canaanite. The 1991 Minardi is a beautiful machine, and
that black and yellow.
And it segues rather nicely, actually, into one of the questions that came in, because the same Lawrence who was asking me about Aston Martin noticed my love for the Jordan 191 being in the new game, and also noted that I'd got into a Twitter thread where I was listing cars that I wanted Codemasters to add to the game. I'm going to run down mine really quick, and then I want you and chat as well. Give me your classic cars that you would like to see in a Codemasters game, because the ones they give you are so uninspired and unimaginative.
Yeah.
I think we can do better, right? And we get 5 each.
Okay.
Ready, go. So I said I wanted the Arrows A23, which you know I love.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted the Tyrrell 019, which was the one John Lacey.
Yeah.
Beautiful car, absolutely stunning. The Minardi MO2, it was crap, but it had that awesome Telefonica livery. Do you remember that?
2001, the yellow one.
Yeah, the bright greeny yellow, snot coloured one.
Yeah, that was a beautiful car.
It was boxy as all hell, but I did love it. The March 881.
Oh, the one with Gujamin and Capelli.
Yeah, and the Brabham BT52, because I don't think any car has been so pointy and arrow shaped as that car, and I love it. And you go back as far as you want, Beetlejuice, as far as you want, and actually narrowing it down to 5 was really, really hard, because there were some beautiful old Marches and Brabham cars. Also, you know, the Tyrrell P34, I just know it will never be in a video game because it's probably a pain in the arse to code for a 6-wheeled car.
Yeah.
I don't have time to go again, so my lap is going to have to be good enough, because I've been talking about classic cars. So much of my life is wasted by me just talking about classic F1 cars. I also always had a soft spot for the 1996 Benetton. Because I think that, I know it wasn't a famous Benetton, but that was the livery that I liked best, for sure. And the Ligier JS43, the one that won the Monaco Grand Prix with Panis. That was on my list.
See, I have sentimental attachment to that car, but I don't think that's the nicest looking Ligier, and I prefer the Prost Blue. Now I'm thinking.
A lot of people prefer the Prost Blue. And you're right, Kane, there is a lot of blue, but I always think the blue cars tend to look better. Like when I think of the BMW Williams cars or the BMW Saubers, the Arrows FA18 with Damon Hill.
Ah, you just nicked it.
It's a beautiful car, beautiful car. Oh no, it was the FA17. The A18 is the black one with Mika Salo and Pedro Diniz. God love him.
Yes.
But also there's so many good-looking Jordans. I think the Jordan 191 was an inspired addition to this game.
Yes.
But now your turn, Simon. Go.
Right, bear with me. I've got some people coming in the chat. I can see James has done some stuff. You've got pole by 49 thousandths of a second. Oh no, you've gone faster.
Do.
I think you've gone faster. Right. James Angley in the chat has put the 1979 Arrows Ford A2.
That's a beautiful car.
Is that the one with Warsteiner on it?
Yeah, I was going to say, isn't it the Warsteiner?
Yeah. Confirm that in the chat for us, please. There, Rhino has put Ligier 1997, Arrows 97, very 90s orientated. Jordan 1999, yep, that was a good one.
Yeah.
96 Benetton, agrees with you, and the 2006 BMW Sauber. Interesting.
That actually was beautiful. Some love for the 1999 Sauber here as well.
Born in the 90s, does it show? Yes, it does.
I did like the 90s Sauber liveries.
Yeah, I liked it where they had it was a Patronus and the little bits of Red Bull, but I did quite like the Credit Suisse ones as well, but it started to look a little bit more Play-Doh-y when that came on board. So I prefer the 90 ones. If I was to go in, I would go for the 1988/89 Minardi, because that black and yellow is love that livery. So simple and so well lined. I would go for, congrats on pole, by the way.
Thank you, mate.
This is really difficult.
It is difficult. Like, chat is asking as well, how do you get down to 5 cars? And it's like, you have no idea how fucking hard it was. In the end, I had to force myself to split it between years rather than taking 3 from a single year that I really like.
Yeah. James has confirmed, yes, it was the Warsteiner one, probably the ultimate ground effect car.
Also, some love for the 40 FG01, by the way.
Yes. Do love my 40s. Actually, right, yeah, that's helped. So I would go for the 88 Minardi. I'd go for the 1994 Pacific.
Oh, yes.
With those beautiful lines on. Then, out of pure morbidness, I'd want the 1994 LaRousse, but the Battenberg one.
Yes.
I'd adore that. I'd also then want the special edition Ligier from 1993, where they mixed all of the blue and whites together and made it like a weird little oil painting-y one, because it was such a weird one-off.
Beetlejuice wants a BMS Scuderia Italia just to piss off Ferrari. That's a good call. That's a good call.
That livery always reminds me of really bad Kentucky Fried Chicken restaurant knockoffs because of the white and red and yellow all over it. Don't ask me why. What would be my 5th one? Fuck. Simtech.
Oh yeah, the Simtech was a beautiful car, even though it was a bag of shit.
Yeah.
Okay, Canaanite's the only new viewer on my side. Basically, the podcast goes to shit now for about 3 laps, so sorry about that.
Oh, I wasn't even ready to go.
No, me neither. That seemed to go quite quickly, didn't it?
It did. Are you going down? I'm going wide. Oh, you're through anyway.
Go away, Lewis Hamilton. No one wants you here with your stupid glasses and your ridiculous dress sense.
I've gone in behind.
And your dreadlocks. Be gone.
And I have to lift off for Eau Rouge. You're all right.
The podcast will be interrupted by the Muppet Show for 3 to 5 laps. You're right. Yes, you're correct, Canaanite. He has started wearing Mr. T chains. What the fucking hell is that all about? I will dive back into the bag of questions really quick. There's one non-F1 related question.
Oh, okay.
And my apologies, I forget who sent it because I wrote these down really quickly. I thought Northerners and Southerners didn't get along. What the hell is this? And also, Zero, why do you drive with a Scottish flag when you clearly have a Northern accent? Okay, excellent questions. I drive with a Scottish flag. Yeah, I just do. And how do we... Well, we got to know each other. Yeah, exactly. I'm also Mexican on this podcast.
That's true. Multinational.
I'm a man of many nationalities.
Many tacos.
So, Simon and I got to know each other about 12 or 13 years ago now through sim racing.
2008.
That's how we know each other. And we've never actually been in a room together.
No.
Ever. We've never met in person. Which sounds ridiculous. Like, we're running out of excuses now. We're running out of excuses now to not do it.
This is true.
I invited him to this year's Formula E race, but then the coronavirus turned up and now the race isn't happening.
And I wasn't able to get to last year's one, so it's just been a complete mess. Oh, I don't like Eau Rouge.
And your setup is really messing with you. That's all that's saving me. I think you're fast around the rest of the circuit, to be honest. My setup is bollocks as well, because the car is hitting the rev limiter. But it might also be what's stopping me putting down enough power to spin myself into a barrier, which has become my trademark. Something of a calling card.
Yes. Well, it's funny actually. So when we met on sim racing, we ran sim racing teams, and kind of collaborated together in Formula Sim racing because we were newbies to the teams kind of ourselves. I was running all on my lonesome as the backmarker brigade because basically I'm shit when it comes to professional stuff, but I can keep it on the road, so I'll be like 35th 3 laps down. Whereas
That's my boy.
You don't necessarily drive, but you love a good team management thing, which could bode you very well for F1 2020.
It's my weakness.
Good jam. So we used to collaborate working on setups. I'd work with your drivers. I'd then bring in some potential extra seats for people that you wanted to test out and stuff like that. And it worked really nicely because everyone got on really well, and we had a good giggle throughout it all. And then we've just kind of ended up lolling on the sidelines.
Well, this started, didn't it, as a video games podcast?
Yeah.
It used to be called the Betacast.
Yeah.
And then we decided to play the Codemasters F1 game together, and it wasn't even decided it was going to be oh shit. Yeah, there it goes.
No!
Yeah. Every fucking time. Every fucking time. What is wrong with me this year?
You have had a horrific year.
I put a wheel on the curb and then bin. Fuck's sake. Right. You're going to have to fire me from this podcast. You need someone who can finish a race. Just to save my reputation, 2 years ago, I I beat Simon for the first time over a season, and then it's just been downhill since then. It's always funny when the new game comes out, figuring out which one of us is going to be shit this year.
Yeah, because we can never both be at the same place at the same time, can we?
No. But yeah, so... And actually, something else on that topic. It always seems that when I crash, it's terminal every time. And then I see Simon crash and I'm on board with him. And it's like, oh, the front wing falls off. And he reverses out of it and it's all fine. But for me, it's always terminal. I always lose the front right wheel, no matter what happens. Yeah, that's true. The podcast resumes when one of us is dead. So I'm speaking to you now from beyond the grave. I've noted your question about Vettel Beetlejuice. We'll definitely come back to that. But to carry on boring you with all this, it started by accident. We did a couple of races as Sauber on F1 2010, I think.
Yeah.
And then it became a regular thing in 2011, and it wasn't until 2014 that we actually finished a season. A full-length season. And then since then, we've been quite good, actually. But it used to be a lot more of a shambles than it is now. I mean, this season's a bad example because I keep crashing for some reason. But it used to be really bad because we used to do it on PC, and the PC versions of these games were always a bit balked. And my internet was from the 70s because Berlin's a very weird place. So we'd always get these desync issues and crazy stuff would happen on track with the physics.
We would never quite know who'd had the right proper race, did we? So we'd be like, oh, I've just finished 7th. And I'd be like, in my game, you're out. Like, huh?
Yeah, we used to get really weird stuff and it got really frustrating. But it still remains, actually, our best years were like 2014, 2015, because that's when the audience was at its best and everything seemed to work out.
I used to get a couple of thousand views.
Yeah, we were doing all right back in the day, but now we have crashed, like I have crashed, on the second lap. As well, that's got to be my worst performance this year.
Aww.
And why is it I also always crash from the lead?
Pressure.
I know.
Maybe you need like a person in front to aim at.
Yeah, maybe that's it. It's always the fast corners that get me at the moment as well. I honestly thought what would happen would be I do exactly what I did just then, but in qualifying. Start at the back. And then maybe, just maybe, make it to the end of the race at the tail end of the points. But no, the gods do not smile on me. Anyway, I hope you're all riveted by this Simon behind the safety car action, X-rated.
This reminds me, just before you dive on, there is a video of me playing, I think it's F1 2015 or 16, and it's my career mode. And the Monaco it comes out. Safety car comes out at Monaco, and it's me trying to get around the safety car, but I hit it, and it automatically black flags you. And there's just a 10-second of me going no, and then there's like a fuck, and it just the stream just stops. If anyone can find it, it is one of my very few moments where I just lose my shit.
It can make you do that, really, can't it? It can. Right, I'm diving back into our big bucket of questions.
Oh, love a big bucket.
I've added Beetlejuice's question to the list. So, one good one that we had, which I really did like, actually. The Schumacher-Ferrari years. Was it Schumacher or was it Ferrari? Could they have done it independent of each other?
Ooh.
And I thought that was quite a spicy question because, you know, Schumacher did win 2 championships at Benetton. Now, perfect timing, Ken and I. Come back just to see the crash. That's key. But Ferrari had sort of been in the doldrums, and actually, if I remember correctly, wasn't Schumacher's first year at Ferrari a bit up and down?
Yeah, all of his wins kind of came from heroic wet victories and stuff. It wasn't necessarily it wasn't the car, and Irvine was nowhere. So, yeah. Oh yeah,
Beetlejuice reminds me actually. They did poach a lot of guys from Benetton.
Yes, they went over en masse, didn't they?
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, I think it would be fair to say it was a combination of both. But if I had to weigh one way or the other, I'd probably say a little bit more in Michael's favour, just because he seems to be the the kingpin that pulled the other pieces into place.
Yeah. Agree. On that as well. So last night after work, I watched on Netflix, and it's new. They've done a documentary on Juan Manuel Fangio. But the thread throughout the whole thing is basically they've gone to the guy, and I remember us being very cynical when this came out. A guy has tried to mathematically prove who is the best F1 driver of all time, and essentially it's Fangio. And one of his key points is that basically Schumacher done all of his stuff at the period of time when Ferrari was at its peak, whereas Fangio moved between 4 different constructors over 6 or 7 years and kind of done all of his victories all at different points, and it didn't matter whether the team was at the top or the bottom, he was still the deciding factor in who won. Whereas with Schumacher it's less so, because if you look at the relativeness of his teammate, they could have easily picked up the places if he was not in existence, which I just found like an interesting twist on stuff. So and you see that now throughout time in general, teams matter more now than what they've ever done kind of before. So yeah, it's just an interesting observation.
I agree, actually. The driver does tend to make a bit less of a difference these days than it did. The exception to the rule seems to be Lewis Hamilton, even though he annoys the arse off me with his stupid comments and clothes and hair and face. Because he's the only guy on the grid at the moment that I regularly see pull half a tenth out of nowhere. Or or maybe some days even pull 5/10 out of nowhere in qualifying, and suddenly wow, where did that come from?
Yeah.
On that point, Beetlejuice, actually, I would have to say that, to my mind, Irvine is the greatest number 2 driver of all time.
I disagree, but okay.
No, I think Irvine was the one. He was the big hitter. He managed to be confident while also knowing his place, and he could bring out the results when he needed to. Both of you disagree with me. Well, this is turning into a right old scrap. Go on, then.
Tacos at dawn.
Yeah.
I don't know who I would put as the greatest number 2, though, but I feel like Barrichello was more consistent than Irvine. But is that because the Ferrari was better or not? I don't know. I would also say potentially maybe David Coulthard. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I would concede that Coulthard is also a good number 2, but I'd still give the edge to Eddie in terms of the guy who I would trust to pick up the pieces if the lead driver wasn't there. The reason I say that is because my abiding memory of David Coulthard is him crashing a Williams into the pit wall.
Yeah, on the same year that you've done it on the formation lap. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe my opinion is slightly flawed. I'm thinking McLaren years, that's why more. But yeah.
Yeah, well, see, that's the thing. You really should be joining him. You should be judging him on his career as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
But it's that memory I have of him, just so embarrassing, even more embarrassing than my race today. Just coasting it into the, yeah. So, yeah, I guess it's not a necessarily open and shut case. I just have a bit of bias towards Eddie Irvine. Also because Eddie Irvine could do a lot of this while also, picking up chicks in the nightclub and getting smashed till 4 a.m. Which, I have a lot of time for. You don't get a lot of that on the grid these days. But it has sparked some interesting contributions via chat. And I think everybody is making good points. Beetlejuice also pointed out that Damon Hill did a solid job, and he did step up very, very well after Senna's death. That is true.
Yes.
I still think Damon Hill is kind of overlooked by history a bit too much, and his career seems to have been a lot shorter than I would have liked it to have been. He got, 8 years?
92 to 99, yeah.
Oh yeah, he retired in 99, didn't even drive 2000, so he got 7 years. Yes, he is overvalued by the Brits a little bit. That's true. But I have to say, I'm with Murray Walker. When he won that championship in Japan, I too got a lump in my throat. Because you could just... I don't know, there was something about Damon that I always liked. His pre-race interviews, I always thought were concise and to the point. I never felt like he was waffling, and he just seemed genuinely likeable. And the team had screwed him mid-season by just deciding they were going to fuck him off. And so him winning the championship at, what at that time could very easily have been his last chance, and ultimately was, there was a feel-good factor there that he was able to keep his focus through things like Senna's death, but also being dropped by his team. And I don't know, there's something about the 96 season that I think 96 goes down as possibly my favourite season.
Have we lost a Renault somewhere on this? Yeah, we have.
Nico Hulkenberg. LOL! I shouldn't lol, really, given that I binned it for no apparent reason on lap 2. This segues in quite nicely to the next question, actually. What was the first Grand Prix you ever watched live? Or what passed for live in those days? And I had to really think about this. What was the first Grand Prix I remember sitting and watching, like, on the day it was happening? And it was 1991 Brazil, I think.
Is that Senna's victory one?
Yes.
What do you remember of that specific thing, or is it just like in your brain as I remember that?
I think what I actually remember more is... Do you remember like how the race would happen, then it would often go into the news, and then you'd have Peter Sissons or whoever.
Moira Stewart.
Yeah, Angry Moira Stewart. And I just remember them talking about Senna.
Okay.
And I know that at least the race had been on. I don't know if I sat and avidly watched it. The first one I remember avidly watching would have been 1994. Because I remember it distinctly. I was in, like, there was a spare room at my grandparents' house with a TV in, so I could go watch my own cartoons or whatever in the morning without disturbing anyone.
Nice.
And same as Beetlejuice, it was Adelaide, 1994.
Wow.
And I remember sitting and watching the race and deciding unilaterally that Jean Lacey was the best driver ever. I don't know why I liked John Lacey so much. I think it was possibly because red was my favourite colour at that age, and he drove a red car, and his name sounded cool. I don't know. But I definitely remember forming an unspoken bond with Jean Lacey at that point. And then the first year I watched the season all the way through was 96, because it was just such a big... No, it may not have been. It may have been earlier, because I also remember our Nige, all the big support there was for Mansell. So maybe I remember more of 92 than I think I do.
Interesting.
But yeah, I remember for sure 96 is probably the first year I watched every race that was on TV, because I was sort of avidly into it. And then, as I often say, the race that sticks most in my memory, though, is Hungary 97. Because Damon Hill, Arrow's heartbreaking last-minute failure.
Never regret. We'll never forget, rather.
R.I.P. in peace. Why is Kevin Magnussen and Robert Kubica rounding out this podium?
I don't think they've stopped yet. The pit stops are really strange, but Raikkonen was second before the pit stops, so fuck knows what's going on. This whole grid has been weird. And I'm not following what Jeff has asked for anyway. I'm not going on to mediums.
No, what a fool. What a fool he is. Now, you're not much older than me, but you are a little older than me. So, what were your...
So
what was your first Grand Prix?
my memories are quite hazy because I basically the thing was in our house was that Sundays would be Sunday roast at the table with BBC Grandstand on in the background because father. So I remember like flashes of races from like Prost Senna time, but I don't think they were watched live, and they would have definitely have been BBC highlights if they were anything at all. And they would have been on in the background either before, during, or after dinner because I didn't used to eat Sunday roast. I still don't like roasts now. And
What?
I know.
You heathen.
I know. So I'd try and smother as much mustard and mint sauce on something as possible. It's because my
perverted BDSM family are you from with mustard?
So my mum used to go, oh, eat the dolly cabbages, Brussels sprouts, fucking dolly cabbages. I used to call them snot balls. Just be like, no, mummy, no. Oh! And then I'd struggle. And then what would happen, this is trauma from my childhood coming out, I used to like not eat very much. And then my mum would be like, my dad would be, and he's Scottish, go, you dunny get down from the buggery table until you've buggery and your buggery meat. And so what would happen is we'd end up in this weird struggle. And one of my earliest memories is of Formula One being on in the background whilst my dad held me down in the living room sofa, feeding me roast lamb or roast beef. Right? And going, buggery, eat it! Because if I didn't, then out would come the cane and I'd get beaten. But in the background is Murray Walker and James Hunt going.
Do you know? Do you know? Like you're saying that and we're laughing, but like
that would be child abuse these days.
But that was how it was, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because I still remember the first time I said bugger and I ended up with soap in my mouth.
Yes. Used to get that as well.
Yeah, like you'd be locked up for that now.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Bugger.
Can't get me now, Grandma.
No. So, just hilarious all the way through. So I remember bits of.
I'm also going to need a new co-host in the next round because you're going to be in therapy.
So I remember bits of like late 80s. So I vividly remember Prost and Senna, Japan. Not the first one where they crashed at the chicane, but I definitely remember seeing the one down at turn 1. And what else do I remember? And I specifically remember black and yellow Minardis because I remember knowing that was like a car that I really, really liked before I knew that they were terrible. I also remember being a fan of Pierluigi Martini because that's what Mummy drinks.
No wonder you got your ass beaten.
I know. And the other thing that I've got, or I used to have, I don't know if I've still got it. It might be one of my perverted things that I've just kept over time. But, and this is more of my rage, and apologies for this off-topic moment. But we used to have live at Spa. So we used to have, and I've still got it, a ZX Spectrum 3. And you used to put in cassettes and play, and eventually Pac-Man would come up 5 minutes later. But we was only allowed to play it at the weekends. So you'd have to sit there, and I'd be like, I really want to play. But Dad would be like, no, buggery, get away from it. No. So what I would then do, because we used to have Nigel Mansell's Grand Prix challenge on ZX Spectrum, and that would be my go-to, and I'd just sit and play that for like 2 hours and then get kicked off upstairs to be like a child, be silent type thing. So what I would do is then get a piece of paper, write the names of the drivers on the grid, cut them up, and then do races around my living room with it. and all of the names were from 1991. So whatever I was doing F1 wise was definitely 1991 onwards, where I was consciously watching it, knowing that I did. But I have memories of before. Sorry, that is such a long ass story.
Do you know the thing about the cutting out though? I can relate to that. I did something very similar. We are two messed up guys. Very, very
Before
weird.
the internet, people, you need to remember this.
And I'm going to have to put some kind of like advisory warning on this podcast, because the minute you mentioned roast beef covered in mint sauce and mustard, I was, what a pervert. I was ready to go, and then I'd take the pineapple and dip it in the coleslaw. Fucking hell.
I'm sorry.
Shout out as well to Beetlejuice for remembering Martin Brundle's massive crash in Australia. I also remember being scared that he'd been hurt, but then being very relieved that he ran back to the pits. Back in the days where teams could afford a T-car. Beetlejuice made tracks out of Mikado. That's awesome. I don't know if you meant Mikado, the Japanese-style chocolate crisps, or if you mean Meccano and it's just auto-corrected you. But either way, big respect.
Super Micados. Mikado is also Spanish for shop. So just going around shops and nicking bits.
Oh no, that's just my accent ruining it.
Oh, okay.
Another question that came in, and it ties into this again very quickly, is if you were to be an F1 driver at any point in history,
Yep.
when would you have your career? When would you start your career? And actually, not just because I love 1996, but when I read this question and thought about it, I actually thought late 90s, early 2000s for sure, because there was enough seats on the grid and enough going on that you wouldn't worry as much about losing your seat as you do today. But basically, anything after, I hate to say it, anything after Senna's death, because that was such a watershed moment.
Yeah.
That I'd be a lot less worried of what would happen in an accident after, the 94-95 seasons. So I definitely be late 90s, early 2000s, but I did also think it would be very cool to be 60s, 70s F1 driver. When it was at the height of its glamour, when Monaco was actually an event rather than something that's talked about as an event today, rather than actually being an event. I think because another question that came in is, do we think F1's losing its glamour, which ties in very nicely with that, and we'll come up to that next. But
I think that's quite a timely question, actually.
It is. But when would you have been an F1 driver, Simon? When would your career have been?
I'm going to say something very similar, actually. For me, it would have been So I'd have gone for 1995, because that was when there was enough cars on the grid to ensure that you were on the grid without having to deal with a 107% rule. But you could have a terrible car and that would kind of vaguely mask your ineptitude for some part of it. And that could be quite interesting. There's something for me around the hilarity of the late 80s, early 90s, where you had pre-qualifying, and there's something for me about lolling against the odds, but I don't think I'd have ever progressed. And there's something quite Gary G-ster about that.
I'd be scared of a Perry McCarthy situation.
Yeah.
Where you technically have a seat. It's here's some wet tyres, there's 20 seconds left in the session, off you go, Tiger. Go get them. In a car that will kill you. So, being honest...
It was almost like the move after Senna, wasn't it? It was yes, it was professional, and yes, it was highly technical beforehand, but it's almost like it became the watershed moment for pre-post business, if that makes sense. I feel like F1 became a business first more than sport from about 94 onwards, even though it clearly wasn't, but it just outwardly feels more like that.
Segueing then into that second part of the question, is F1 losing its glamour? And at least speaking for myself, I would have to say yes. And I think that's part of why F1's dying the way that it is in some respects. Car manufacturers can get exposure so much more easily now, and you can get TikToks and Instagram stories that get way more eyes on them than a full F1 Grand Prix. And then, I think glamour's lost its glamour to a certain extent.
I think glamour is no longer considered appealing. Because we're in an age of let's all be sustainable, let's all vilify anyone with excess on Twitter so that we can feel part of the liberati, I guess, of people who feel like they need to liberate the earth with every single decision made. Oh, it's put on hard. Fucking hell. Never mind.
Sorry, a bit of Schadenfreude there coming out because I'm watching from the sidelines. It just escaped my lips. I'm sorry.
So you wouldn't be able to have a Bennett on launch on a volcano anymore because people would be busy putting a fucking I was going to say Just Eat petition. That's me. A Change.org petition out there saying about how they've just ruined everyone's life.
Sorry, I just heard the Freudian slip that you made there. It will be on Just Eat. Are you hungry, Simon?
I've had contactless deliveries and I'm not ashamed of this.
I had contactless burritos today, actually. They were fucking amazing. But, yeah, I mean, Canaanite's making the point I'm exactly about to make. I think it's also that glamour doesn't really exist anymore. Yeah. Like in the 70s, or even in the 80s it already started, actually, but in the 70s there was sort of a genuine class. Mm-hmm. And like F1 was elite, the celebrities around it were glamorous. And I think it's partly because now it's so easy to be a celebrity, and you can be a celebrity for almost nothing. It doesn't necessarily require talent.
Box.
And even when you get celebrities that do have talent, quite often it's like, morning, here's me on the toilet taking a shit. Yeah. Because I don't know, that's how it is. And then also, displays of wealth or what used to be considered, signs of class have become very vulgar and distasteful. But I don't know if it's because of how people are presenting it. Because, if you look at, take, James Hunt or any of the celebrities, of the 60s and 70s, mm-hmm. They just sort of did it, He'd buy a Jaguar E-Type or whatever, and he'd drive to Monaco for drinks and dinner, and he wouldn't shout about it because the mere act of doing it carried a certain gravitas. Whereas now it's like, yo, everyone, I'm on a yacht at Monaco drinking champagne. Mm-hmm. Oh, look, she's got her tits out. And, I don't know if it's both the act itself and the presentation that have become vulgar, or if one's dragged the other one down.
It's the presentation and the need for attention, I think. Because in a world where we are now always one click away from being entertained, you now have to shout louder. And for me, presentation of elitism, celebrity status, or just status in general, was more about being demure and being covered up and showing elegance through class in like 50s, 60s, 70s. And even if you was like a drug-fueled womanizer, you would still be doing it in a wonderful suit, and you would have like your...
you dress for dinner, yeah.
Yeah, you dress for dinner and eat her for dinner. So then... But no one needed to see that you'd got an OnlyFans account showing you eating out for what you had for dinner afterwards. And that's the thing, is that... and this devaluation of attention and time and memeing and clickbait titles and all of that is a consequence of now everything needs to be vulgar and 10 times louder than the last thing to get seen and shown. And I would also then say, by extent, and this is just me ranting now, sorry, this is my problem now with our Formula One stars becoming esports celebrities, not taking it seriously, smashing all into each other. And I don't think anyone will win from this esports season, where everyone's now on there screaming, "Where's Jimmer?" Jimmy Broadbent, lovely guy. Had a few chats with him before he was famous because he was in some sim racy stuff that I was doing. Still seems like a very nice and normal guy. But that is an esports celebrity thing. You train for that, you have your craft for that. It is a completely separate discipline to what the F1 people are doing. And if you're beaten by Wang Chang Wu 7429B underscore, Charles Leclerc, I don't care if you're racing that, it's devalued you because you're showing actually that your craft can be done by someone sat there eating Doritos down the straight and getting probably just as many, if not more, views because of the meme-worthy crap that's going on in chat. And then, so who wins? None of that to me screams class. That screams clickbait, meme media that is disposable and easily forgotten. End rant.
No, I completely agree. I actually think it was nice of F1 to think about entertaining the fans during this lockdown, but
absolutely,
I don't think it does the drivers any good to participate too much. I know the fans say they want to see it, but I juxtaposed an actual esports race and then the celebrity esports race.
Yeah.
And the actual esports event, it had Jack Nicholls on commentary. The racing was superb. Just superb. Really, really good. Wheel to wheel. Some of the best overtaking I've seen. I mean, obviously, it's not as impressive as the real cars because there's no risk in it.
Sure.
It's just you and I do it, or at least I do it for 2 laps and then you do it. Anyone could go and do what you're doing right now.
Yeah.
But they at least put the effort into doing it professionally and not making stupid mistakes. But when you see someone like George Russell or Charles Leclerc binning it, or like the celebrity grid, just everyone's smashing into each other, the cars are facing the wrong way at turn 3.
Yeah.
I don't think it does the drivers any good, but Beetlejuice is correct that it has done wonders for sim racing itself. I've no doubt that it has, and of course the more the merrier in that regard.
Definitely.
I want to see more money come into the industry. I want more games, a wider choice of simulations.
So long as people make the transition to or decide the camp that they want to be in, and this is a league issue as well for sim racing in general, is are you going to be fun professional? Are you going to be a Smashfest open server, or are you going to go for being dedicated and professional and showcase exactly how good sim racing can be and choose your class and go there? Because otherwise the influx of people will think that it's okay to be smashing people down the straight and then going, what the fuck? Leaving the chat. They'll be in and out of sim racing quite interesting. So I'll be really interested to see how sim racing is in 18 months from now when the bubbles quote unquote burst.
Yeah. Kenanite says it would be nice if there was a manager game. There would. I actually honestly think there's a gap in the market for a race management sim, a detailed one that is tied to some sim racing software. So there's a management side where you have to develop the car and everything, and teams have some sort of meaning. Not all the cars are equal, so there's some jostling in the driver market.
Yeah.
And then the drivers drive. I honestly think there's a gap in the market for that. I also think a good multiplayer, or at least 2-player F1 management game would be superb. And I was pleased to see that F1 2020 is supposed to have a management game built into it, but I don't know how deep it will be or if it's any good at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely room for that. But yeah, I think we're on the same page a little bit. Like I actually thought I was watching George Russell the other day, and I thought he was making very amateurish errors in the game, which, again, the game and a real F1 car, not the same thing, obviously, but you do start to question how good are these F1 drivers. I mean, even I know not to touch the curb there.
Yeah. And it also brings into question then how actually, if this is supposed to be the closest official F1 experience of the game, how wonky is the game compared to the real life thing if they're making weird errors like that anyway? So, yeah, I don't think anyone comes out of it after the laughs if you actually sit and think about it properly. Hopefully many people won't. but there.
And actually, if anyone thinks we're being a little bit old man and grumpy about this, I'd recommend going back a year or two and looking at the real drivers take you for a lap, like the hot laps.
Yep.
Because they were never edited. And if you watch a corner of the screen, you'll be surprised how often they get like corner cut warnings and track limits warnings and so on. And it's like, you're supposed to be the best of the best. Like, re-record the fucking lap. And I don't know. Here's a good question on the second to last lap. And chat, feel free to chip in. Are there any Grand Prix currently or historically that we felt were held at the wrong track? So right country, wrong track. And immediately I got to thinking USA.
Ooh.
Watkins Glen, please. Watkins Glen, please.
I would
please,
like to
please,
see.
please.
I would like to see Watkins Glen. Actually, I think it's a very simple circuit, but I'd like to see something there from a historical point of view. Although I do like Circuit of the Americas as a track. I don't necessarily like it to drive massively personally, but I do like it as a track and a spectacle.
Kenny Knight says France, which I thought would come up because I think we all agree Paul Ricard looks confusing these days.
Give me Poe. Watching everyone trying to get round a roundabout.
Beetlejuice says Germany. That's odd because I've always rated Hockenheim, and I preferred the races at Hockenheim over the Nürburgring.
So I do videos for Circuits of the Past on YouTube, plug, and when I done the updated Hockenheim video of when they got rid of the long straights and turned it into the new one, the script I have to read is basically Herman, the guy that runs everything, saying about how horrific the butchering of the track is, and all of the comments are just like, they ruined this, everyone, and they done it with government money, it's a travesty, murderers, and all of that stuff. I really like the new version. I love the old version too, but I think actually that track always delivers great racing, great overtaking, and is one of Tilke's best in terms of actually producing results and good entertainment.
Superb answer. I can't actually think of many more because I love Melbourne. Adelaide was good, but I prefer Melbourne.
Yeah.
There's no track in Italy I would rather see than Monza.
No.
Spa is superb. Silverstone is my favourite British circuit by a long way. I think Brands has a lot to offer, but no. If I had to take one, it'd be Silverstone.
At that level, I would be super intrigued to see. I'd just like to see an F1 car go round Thruxton just to see it, but I wouldn't actually want to race there.
No.
Same with Croft.
Kenny Knight was suggesting Imola. I've always preferred Monza to Imola myself, but
since the chicanes have gone in, no.
There will be a segment of fans. I think
what about
Japan will be a hard one. I think Japan would be a hard one because Fuji's great, but I love Suzuka. And what did you say, Simon, just then?
I was going to say Vallelunga in Italy would be an interesting one to have a look at. But again, I wouldn't want to swap it out for Monza. This is why I want...
clap, sir.
Thank you very much. This is why I want continent Grand Prix, so that you can test out other venues as you go round. If we're going to have 25 races in the championship, I want a Grand Prix of America, I want a Grand Prix of Europe, I want a Grand Prix of Asia, and I want an FIA Grand Prix. And that can move year on year, so that you can test out and rotate circuits round whilst keeping the tradition.
I think that's a really good suggestion, actually. There should be like heritage races and then variable races.
Damn right.
Beetlejuice suggests Mugello. I do like Mugello, but not as much as Monza. And then Kenny Knight suggests Imola as the European Grand Prix. I will be totally down with that.
Yeah.
We are running out of time, and I still have like more than 50% of the questions here. I will save some for the next episode, but why don't we do a quick fire to see us out while we marvel at your excellent race performance?
Thank you very much. I'm just going through and we'll have a look at the championship standings whilst you warm up the question.
I will also move over to the championship standings so you can see how badly Simon's kicking my arse.
Sorry.
It's like I haven't eaten my roast dinner. The Vietnamese Grand Prix, flash in the pan, or do we think it will last?
Flash in the pan in the same way that Korea and India were, but
Yes.
I would like to see another Asian race. I just don't think it should be in Vietnam.
Where would you put it?
With Malaysia not wanting to have anything, I would personally like to see a return back to the Bud International Circuit in India, or we do Macau. If you're going to do a street race, let's do Macau and fuck it over and do it properly. Because Vietnam already looks really horrible in terms of like safety. So if you're going to have a disregard for safety, fucking do it in Macau.
I would have to say I too liked the Indian track. I hated driving it in the game because there was like an off-camber bump that made me spin every fucking time I went over it. I couldn't figure it out. But I did think it was an attractive track, and I did kind of like the layout as a race to watch. How do we rate Kevin Magnussen? He started strong at McLaren, and then he divides opinion today. He does divide opinion today. I actually honestly think he's quite good. I think he's a little hot-headed, but in the way that in another era would be the deciding factor between him winning a championship or not. Because particularly in the 80s, you had to kind of be a dick to win a title. Mm-hmm. You had to be hot-headed and more aggressive than the next guy, so either they get out of the way or you take them out.
I think he'd be dead, though, if he was born in the 60s and 70s.
Oh, yeah, he'd be a dead man. He would have died at fucking Spa. Do you remember that crash he had at Renault? I thought he was
when the
dead
headrest
when that
came off. Yeah. Oh, just a shout back to the other one. James has put a fantastic suggestion that didn't pop into my head. F1 at Road America? ?
Oh, that is a tantalising prospect, isn't it?
I would be down for that very much.
I think I'd like to see it, at least as a one-off.
Yeah.
Just to see how it actually played out.
Great suggestion.
Kennanite likes Kevin Magnussen, but he's like Benjamin Button. He was good at first, but he's more and more like a rookie as the years go by. That's quite a good analogy, actually. You've drawn a giggle out of both of us.
I wonder if that's the Grosjean rubbing off on him, and maybe he needs to go elsewhere. I think once Grosjean goes, that will be the measure of Magnussen, because those two, I think, are winding each other up. And if Haas is still about in 2021 and Magnussen is still attached, Grosjean, I don't think will be. And then I'll be interested to see what K-Mag can bring, because there's a rough diamond in there. But yeah,
it's just very rough.
Yeah, it is sandpaper on the arse cheeks.
Best driver, past or present, to go for a pint with?
Ooh.
That's really hard, because obviously some people are going to immediately gravitate to people like Hunt. Mm-hmm. It's hard to say, because I've heard on the grapevine that actually Mika Salo is a good laugh with a pint.
He also has developed a dad bod and a dad face, which makes me think that he can take quite a few pints on at the same time.
Yeah, I don't think he'd be getting an early taxi home. And he keeps up with Eddie Irvine. Those two go for drinks quite regularly. And if you can keep up with Eddie Irvine, who would also be on my list.
I was going to say, surely he'd need to be there in the like get out car afterwards.
Yeah, because I've heard that Mika Hakkinen is a very interesting guy to speak to, but he's quite boring. like he'll talk F1 in a way that's really interesting, but apparently he's really vanilla. And I remember actually seeing an interview once with Jeremy Clarkson, who said that he got a lift off Mika Hakkinen once and was really excited about it. And it turns out that he drove an old Volvo at the time, listened to Cher and Mariah Carey, and drove really slowly. And he told Jeremy, like, I do my driving on the track.
Hakkinen would be my ASMR video.
But he's also got that kind of dry sense of humour that Kimi Räikkönen also has, and I think that could be kind of refreshing.
The Nordic stuff.
So it's kind of hard to pick a single driver I'd go for a pint with. But I'm going to go Mika Salo.
I'm going to go Sterling Moss, because I'd like to hear some more random stories about him now that he's passed.
Oh, that's an excellent choice. That is an excellent choice. Beetlejuice would like to go for a pint with Rubens Barrichello, presumably so you feel forever young.
Presumably so that you can always feel like the happy one of the two. I always feel like he was one knife away from being a cutter.
And Beetlejuice says that Rubens Barrichello would at least be able to sort of dish the dirt on Michael behind closed doors. That's a good point, actually.
I bet there's plenty of juicy stories to be told that may now not be allowed to be told publicly because it's seen as the bad thing to do.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. And let me pick a last one at random. Do you guys ever play other games together? And if so, why don't you stream them? We don't, actually. I think we played something else together once.
We did. We've done some F1 Race Stars. We've done some R Factor stuff. We've done Project Cars.
It's always car stuff we do, though. We've never played anything else together, like privately or streamed.
We did have. We've got one or two things in the pipeline. I know we was talking about arranging some time together so that we could do some Star Trek bridge thing, which I've now bought actually. For PSVR, so at some point maybe we'll have to do that. Require some alcohol because I am shit with VR. I still get really sick unless I'm stationary.
We've got some suggestions though. Beetlejuice suggests I get you on Hearts of Iron. I would love to do that.
I'm not very good. I'm not very good with strategy games. I take too long divering.
I think that's why he's nominated you. And I'm not good at them either, mate. I don't let it hold me back though.
Your Finnish contingent will love. Your Norwegian contingent will love you for it when you slaughter me. I'm
big in Norway, man. And Kane and I golf with friends. I can't believe we've never played golf with friends actually. And there was a game a few years ago that was like wrestling with your dick out.
Genital jousting.
Yeah, that would have been something that we would have done.
Yeah, the multiplayer was balked, but that game is also banned from streaming on YouTube and I think Twitch now as well, because I have family game nights where I get my sister, her husband, two daughters who are now both engaged and living separately, and we'd all come round. And I brought out genital jousting and basically filmed the awkward moment where the parents are doing genital jousting with the daughters, and I was in my element, and it was shots for whoever lost. And there is footage of me sliding off my sofa and not being able to get off the floor. But the game's fucking banned, so I could never upload it. So it's kind of sitting. I'll have to do like an edit of it or somewhere. But yeah.
There's two reasons why I was cracking up a little bit there. First of all was Beetlejuice. Not surprised at all that you remembered the name of that game and that it took you less than a second. Your description of what was going on as well, just this window we're getting in this podcast, this disturbing window into your family life. It's very bizarre.
This is why I'm quite happy in the lockdown. I don't need to deal with anybody. It's great. Love it.
Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us. We've had a good laugh. This has been the most fun episode for a while, actually, even though I crashed, because we've... Beetlejuice asked if you can come over for next Thanksgiving, Simon.
Providing viruses... F1 2019 has crashed. Hopefully I'm still live. But yeah, lol, I will do. It's providing virus isn't still going. Whoop. Hey. Yeah. Yes. Take care, everyone. Stay safe. Bye. My PlayStation is literally stuck, so I can't even end the stream. Fuck's sake. This is a great fail way to end a failcast. I shall bid you farewell because it's locked and I can't do anything with it.